Okay, very good. All right, everybody. Thank you for coming to this meetup, wherever you're hailing in from, which is many places, far and wide. I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to learn about the topic that I'm very passionate about today. It's actually one of the things, I should say, one of the things that I teach in my Get Real, Deal, and Heal course that I'll talk about later. It's one of the modules that that a lot of people don't realize they're doing subconsciously. And behind some of those perfectionistic tendencies, there's these wonderful beliefs of I'm not good enough. What's wrong with me? I did something wrong. Why don't people like me? And, the antidote for perfectionism is self-love, right? Learning to love yourself. So thank you for being here, and I truly appreciate your participation. So with that, I always like to start with this disclaimer. So by participating in this event, you acknowledge that my positive psychology, transformational mindset, and integrative nutrition certifications in no way are to be construed or substituted as psychological counseling or any other type of therapy or medical advice. My comments about the material are backed by scientific evidence, life experience, and expressions of my opinion. Each participant's results depend upon his or her unique learning ability, motivation, commitment, and other factors. When you participate in these virtual personal development events, you fully agree that there are no guarantees as far as specific outcomes or results you can expect from using the information you receive on or through this event. Okay? It's always good to have a disclaimer. Hello, my name is Perfectionist. How many could basically take that sticker and put it on their chest? I know at one point in my life, when I was younger, a lot younger, I could wear that because I was very hard on myself. I was a sore loser. I'd freak out like tremendously. I could remember as a kid that I'd freak out if I ever lost something, if I lost a game. Maybe that was natural to some kids, but some don't really freak out. But over time, like going to school, I learned some of these beliefs that I'm not good enough for some reason, and I developed a little bit of some perfectionistic tendencies. And I think all of us kind of have this in some way because, behind all these things is we really worry about what people think of us, right? And that's why the antidote for perfectionism is really learning to love yourself, self-love, where you could really love yourself authentically and be truly vulnerable, where you're not worried about what other people think of you, okay? So what is perfectionism? So perfectionism is a personality trait characterized by a person striving for flawlessness and setting high performance standards, accompanied by critical self-evaluations and concerns regarding other evaluations. That sounds pretty harsh, huh? But that's the reality of the situation. And I love that little guy. He's holding up a sign, no mistakes. And he has an eraser as well, right? So where does this come from? Where does this learned behavior come from, right? So, we all have perception. We have many different perceptions of sight, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and we develop these beliefs, right? So, these things develop between the ages of 0 and 7. We're like sponges. We're almost in a hypnotic state, the brainwave state, where we're absorbing as much information as we possibly can. So, the behaviors that we see as far as like attachment theory or communication style can have a huge influence on developing these subconscious beliefs. It's like a computer, right? A computer is totally blank until we start putting programs like Microsoft Word or Microsoft Office. Then it knows what to do. Well, this is our brains and who we are. We're like this biological, electrical computer, right? And we learn these different things from environmental factors, from culture, from seeing our perceptions. So where does it come from? It is a learned behavior from our upbringing, coupled with influential environmental factors that is perpetuated by insidious, destructive, unintelligent beliefs stored in our subconscious that influence our thoughts, feelings, actions, and results every single day, right? So to kind of give you a quick example of that, of how this happens to us, right? And it may not be, this is not an example of a perfection example, but to try to simplify it a little more, let's just say that when you were a kid between the ages of 0 and 7, you were bit by a dog, okay? You're going to develop a belief that all dogs are bad unless you're desensitized to the fact that all dogs aren't bad. And as a result, anytime you see a dog, your first thought is going to be that dog is bad. The belief is that dog is bad. The feeling is going to be fear. The action is going to be I'm not going near that dog, and the result is you can never go any place where there's a dog. And that's just going to continue the cycle. And what happens, it's called neuroplasticity. You're building a neural pathway and a habit, which is a cue, a routine, and a reward that is causing you to believe in this certain belief that all dogs are bad. And that could be the same if you're exposed to a parent when you are like doing schoolwork and a parent says to you all the time, you're doing it all wrong. You're doing it all wrong, right? It's a learned behavior. Like you're going to develop this belief that I can't do anything right, right? Because you're getting this negative communication style from your parent or whomever that is causing this belief to be stored in your subconscious. And these environmental factors can also perpetuate these destructive intelligent beliefs. So, just a little example of how these things basically start to, ruminate in your brain, in your, subconscious. And then these things become a habit, right? A habit is a cue, a routine, and a reward. An example of that would be like if you a cue would be your alarm clock in the morning, where you set it at 7 o'clock every morning is a cue that you have to wake up for work at 7 o'clock. The habit is if you smoke cigarettes, you reach for the night table and put a cigarette in your mouth. The reward is, oh, I get this minty, not minty, forget that. You don't get mint unless you're smoking a menthol cigarette. But basically, you get like the nicotine high. How do you change a habit, right? You have to change the routine. The cue is always going to be the same. So instead of having the cigarettes, you put toothpaste and a toothbrush on your night table. So you reach that. And you have to do that for 66 days because the scientific evidence shows that in order to change a habit, to build a new neural pathway where you shed the old belief, the old habit, to change, it's repetition, deliberate practice. And you have to be able to do that over and over and over again. And so that way you could develop a new habit, a new behavior. Okay. So, perfectionism, the origins, where does it come from? Well, it could come from our family. Human beings are meaning makers, right? We're always trying to make meaning out of things. We develop beliefs as we age from the experiences we perceive with our five senses, per the perception, right? If we have competitive siblings or domineering parents that emphasize outstanding performance rather than effort, process, persistence, a child may develop the belief that they have to strive for perfection, right? So there's a big difference. And one of the things that I teach is the difference between people praise and process praise, right? If you're always having someone tell you, for instance, let's do an example, that you're the smartest person in the world because you always get straight A's. You're so smart. You're so smart. You could subconsciously develop an insecurity from all this people praise, because if you get a D on a test, you're going to freak out and be like, if I show my parents that I have a D, then they're going to think bad of me. Instead of process praise, where it'd be like, wow, I don't know what you're doing to get such good grades, but your study habits must be awesome. Like, what are you doing to do that? And then you encourage that process, right? And it takes the pressure off of someone feeling like, oh, they're going to be less than if they don't achieve a high standard. We'd much rather feel pleasure and contentment rather than pain and fear. Therefore, the struggle for perfectionism is an attempt to starve off anxieties about failing. And again, that goes back to vulnerability, the difference between the difference between a growth versus fixed mindset. When you are, the way the people speak to you can really come across as making you fearful of trying new things because you have a fear of failure, a fixed mindset. Anxiety and worries about what other people think about us can cause us not to be our true selves. As a result, we become people pleasers and avoid making mistakes at all costs for fear of rejection. And the one thing I want to say about this is that it's not your fault, right? These are things our parents did the best that they could. Obviously, some parents are worse than others. The environment that we live in, the TV, commercials, even when I was young in the 70s, I could remember it must have been very harder for women because they would show these skinny women in bikinis, which would cause women to feel like insecure, like, oh, I have to be that, or guys aren't going to like me. Same thing with guys. They'll show real muscular guys with a lot of muscles. And basically, we would feel kind of insecure because we don't look like that, that girls won't like us. We didn't learn like these tools, like the intrinsic motivation versus the extrinsic motivation, where outside things make us happy rather than building internal happiness and looking at things that would make us, that we could make meaning of, like being in nature or spirituality or loving relationships or whatever that makes you happy and lights you up. Okay. So, helpful questions for assessing perfectionism. So, if you're not sure whether or not you're a perfectionist or not, well, you're in the right place because here we're going to ask some questions. So, don't be so hard on yourself because, again, no matter what age you are, you have the ability to change these beliefs. Beliefs are decisions. So, at any point in time in your life, you could flip a belief from like I'm not good enough to I am worthy. But it takes some work. It's about having the evidence for that, right? It takes a lot of different things to change. But have you ever kept trying to meet your standard, even if this has meant that you have missed out on things? Ask yourself that. What sort of situations trigger feelings of distress when your standards are not met? What do you think of people who do just enough to get by? Do you ever feel a failure as a person because you haven't met your goals? What kind of situation must you be in? In what ways do you compare yourself to others? How do you typically feel often? Have you ever been told that your standards are too high? Right? Just some questions, helpful questions to assess whether or not you're a perfectionism, if you have perfectionism, or maybe you recognize someone in your family that may have it who's struggling or at work. Just some things to look out for. Okay. So there's 5 types of perfectionism. Okay. So there's self-oriented perfectionism, socially prescribed perfectionism, overt perfectionism, other-oriented perfectionism, and covert perfectionism. So self-oriented perfectionists have high personal standards, right? They expect to be perfect. They're very critical if they fail to meet these expectations. The socially prescribed perfectionist believes that other people expect them to be perfect, and these other people will be highly critical of them if they fail to meet expectations. It's kind of the example I gave you about grades. An overt perfectionist has a very strong preference for order and show increased anxiety when they don't have order around them. I'm going to show you in a slide that there's some, mental or some things from the DSM that psychologists use to, diagnose like a mental condition, a mental illness that relates to perfectionism. There's other oriented perfectionism, which is they expect other people to be perfect and are highly critical of those who fail to meet their impossibly high standards or expectations. That might be somebody at work. You might have somebody who is like a micromanager boss, and they fall into that category of other oriented perfectionist. And then you have covert perfectionists, right? And they basically tend to have low expectations of those around them and will outwardly say they prefer being average or laid back, yet internally they secretly want to succeed. That sounds pretty hard a way to live. That doesn't sound so good. So these are the five different, perfectionistic tendencies that people seem to have. And you could probably have more than one, or you could have all of them. And this is from Stober, how other oriented perfectionism differs. And this came from the Journal of Psychopathology and Behavioral Assessment. Okay. So, what are some of the characteristics of perfectionists? Okay. So, some of the, one of the things I'm going to tell before I go is I will take all the questions at the end of the presentation. Oh, I just saw Sherry just left. No problem, Sherry. And I'm going to open this up for questions and answers. I'm going to try to get through with this in an hour and maybe sooner, and then we'll talk about it. Okay. So, fear of failure is one of the characteristics of a perfectionist. So, this is someone who may have a fixed mindset. They see failure as a statement to his or her self worth, lack self compassion for oneself. This can lead to a fixed mindset, which will result in doing things they know they can excel at and never take risks. Then we have all or nothing thinking, which is maximizing the situation in which the negative aspects of a situation are magnified while the positive aspects are minimized, right? That's one of the thinking traps that I should have in this PowerPoint that we're going to go over. It's a thinking trap that is maximizing and minimizing. Some people tend to be defensive when they're, a perfectionist, tend to personalize themselves because a critique may threaten to expose their flaws. Inflexibility, being too rigid on themselves and others, easily use character assassination and judgments when things don't go their way. Excessively controlling, can jump to conclusions and use manipulation tactics because they're threatened by their own fear of failure if someone messes up something they're involved with, maybe a boss, a micromanager. Fault finding in themselves and others, overly critical of themselves and others for simple tasks. So you have to ask yourself, do you have some of these? Or do you recognize some of these characteristic traits of a perfectionist in someone you know? So very good to be on the lookout for, okay? Especially if you see it in our kids, because if our kids start to get this way of thinking, we want to try and reverse that. And it is reversible, but the only way it's reversible is if we change. We have to change our line of thinking in order to help them. And that is the difference between the process praise, the people praise, and other things that other like tools and concepts and things that we should have been taught in our early teens, late teens, and early 20s on concepts that we never heard of or never knew existed, which we'll go over in a little bit. Okay. So there are disorders, like I said, that are associated with perfectionism or in which perfectionism is elevated. So again, you could look at somebody who's has obsessive compulsive disorder. They could be like their house has to be spotless or, whatever it is that causes them to have the OCD. That could be a sign of like the underlying root cause could be a belief that they have, but it's tied to perfectionism. Okay. Social anxiety disorder, panic disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, body dysmorphic disorder. We see a lot of that in boys and girls, to be honest with you. I was really surprised. I have a friend who is a doctor in psychology, and her main role is to help people with eating disorders. And I couldn't believe the statistic that she told me that you would think that guys have a lot of this. That would be mostly a female problem, but guys have just as much of this dysmorphic disorder as women do as well. They just keep quiet about it more. In fact, I dealt with that as a young child because I grew up a little chubby and I had these love handles. And no matter how much I worked out, I couldn't get rid of them. And, it freaked me out. And I'd compare myself to other people in the gym. And I was like, oh, so I'd always look in the mirror and touch my stomach all the time and didn't like what I saw. I had to learn that it was more of an inside job, not an outside job. Again, the difference between intrinsic motivation of working out to make me feel healthy and feel good about myself because I know it's the right thing to do to help all the systems run properly rather than, oh, it's an extrinsic thing that people are looking at me and judging me and worrying that people aren't going to like me because I didn't look a certain way. A lot of people have that. Chronic fatigue syndrome, eating disorders, depression, bipolar, suicidal behavior. So you can see there are a lot of disorders associated with perfectionism. So if you know somebody who may be experiencing these different things, reach out, see if you could help them. Okay. And if you are someone who is struggling with this, okay, now you don't feel as bad because if you do have some type of perfectionism and you are suffering or you do have one of these disorders, don't be so hard on yourself. It's kind of almost natural that these characteristics come along with it, but you could do certain things to change your mindset. Getting in front of the right person who could teach you the tools, the concepts that could help to change to build new neural pathways, teach you about what neuroplasticity is, understand like your brain physiology. Okay. A lot of times, we're in society now where I believe that medicine is necessary, but we are very quick to push medicine on people, especially a lot of drugs that for, some disorders. And what happens is where instead of going deep and looking at some of the things that we're going over tonight, how to learn these different concepts and tools, we're actually causing like some of these drugs is causing like obesity. They're causing, and psychologists today, I just listened to a podcast, very prominent psychologist from Harvard went on a podcast and said, I have to really admit this, that a lot of the drugs that I've prescribed in the past, we have to look at our body as a whole system. And unfortunately, these drugs like SSRIs and these things are causing an epidemic. They're causing obesity. It says right on the label that these drugs will cause weight gain. So we have to pay attention to that's why I created Holistic Wellcare Advisors, so people could learn about some of the alternative treatments that help the mind and the body. The gut and brain are connected. And we'll go over that in a little bit. Okay. So how do we overcome perfectionism? Be real, not perfect. Okay. So overcoming perfectionism takes deliberate practice. Deliberate practice is one of the modules in my course, Get Real, Deal, and Heal. And what you need is motivation plus clear design plus feedback plus repetition equals clarity. That is really the definition of deliberate practice. Practice makes perfect, but deliberate practice makes you a legend. The difference between deliberate practice and practice is, give you an example, like let's just say Kobe Bryant is shooting baskets by himself and he's just practicing. Okay. Deliberate practice is he has a camera shining on him, or he has a coach watching him, telling him what he needs to do to make adjustments. So instead of him making 9 out of 10 baskets, free throws, he makes 10 out of 10. So we need to make sure that when it comes to deliberate practice, we're doing things where we have an accountability partner to help us, get better at what we're doing. Thinking traps. So these are some of the things that can cause you to have these perfectionistic tendencies. And thinking traps are habitual ways of thinking that stop us from flexible and accurate thinking. So this is where we have to like learn these concepts and tools and almost how to learn how to become our own cognitive based therapist. We have to recognize what we're doing, and it's called real-time resilience skills. So some of the thinking traps here are jumping to conclusions. believing you are certain of the meaning of a situation despite little or no evidence to support it. And you're doing these things subconsciously, which is really tied to like these beliefs that we have. I'm not good enough. What's wrong with me? I did something wrong. Why don't people like me? Why do I react? Why am I getting defensive? And it's because, we have these things that are brewing in our subconscious that we don't realize are causing us to have these habitual ways of thinking that stop us from real flexible and accurate thinking. So we want to slow down, like ask ourselves, slow down. What is the evidence for for someone jumping to conclusion or you jumping to conclusion? There's generalization, which is character assassination. Look at a behavior. Is there a specific behavior that explains the situation? Tunnel vision, focusing on the less significant details in a situation while screening out the more important aspects. So, what do? Include more. What important info did I miss? Look at the big picture. I talked about this one earlier, magnifying and minimizing. Errors in evaluating events in which the negative aspects of a situation are magnified while the positive aspects are minimized, right? What's the saying? Either you see the glass half full or you see the glass half empty. How about you just see the glass and you decide, oh, there's good points and there's bad points. Be even-handed. What positive events occurred? Right? It's all about perception, how we see a situation. Personalizing, pointing the finger at us, right? So when we point the finger at somebody else, we have three fingers pointing at us. That's externalizing. Personalizing is when we're pointing the finger at us. The tendency to automatically attribute cause of an adversity to one's personal characteristics or actions. Look outward. How did others or circumstances contribute? The opposite, externalizing, pointing fingers at others. The tendency to automatically attribute the cause of an adversity to other people or to circumstances, right? What is the word for that? Blame, 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 blame. Look inward. How did I contribute? We should be looking inward, okay? Lastly, mind reading. That's the one that I struggled with for a long, long time. Assuming you know what the other person is thinking or expecting another person to know what you are thinking. It has a tendency to have a lot of people-pleasing behavior in that characteristics. Speak up. Did I express myself or ask for more information? It's about asking questions, not being afraid to ask questions. But when you're struggling with perfectionism, it's really hard to do because you're afraid if somebody finds out about you, then okay, wow, then I'm going to be in, they're not going to like me. But again, the antidote is learning to love yourself. When you are able to understand that you're flawed, that you're human, that you're going to make mistakes. And the difference between fixed and growth mindset is that when you have a growth mindset, if you do make a mistake, you realize that it's just a mistake at what I'm doing, but I am, and not, turning it into, I am a mistake, right? That's the big difference. So we have to understand that and learn that and apply it to our lives. So cognitive-based therapy, okay? This is really important because it's called real-time resilience skills. And when I'm sure, I don't know how many people on the call have been to therapy, but it's really important. Like, when you go to a therapist and you heal your trauma, it's like you want to kind of learn, like, how do I question my thoughts in real time? How can I become my own cognitive-based therapist, right? Um, we're meaning makers, right? And we also like to make assumptions. And I'm going to give you an example of that in the next slide. But cognitive therapy has some components to it. It deals with an adversity, belief, consequence, disputing evidence, and evaluation of the rational brain. So how does it work? Our thoughts, what we think affects how we feel and act. Behaviors, what we do affects how we think and feel. Emotions, what we feel affects how we think and act. Okay. So when it comes to these certain things, like an activating event, when triggered, can you learn to practice the pause and not react to your negative mind chatter? Right. So, like, if somebody says, oh, there's a rumor that we're going to be laid off, that the company is laying off people. Somebody might just go, holy crap, they just react instead of practicing the pause. And then all of a sudden the negative mind chatter, oh, I'm going to lose my job. And then that first degree worry happens. And then they ruminate and catastrophize. And then the second degree worry comes where they say, oh, if I lose my job, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. Then I'm not going to be able to pay my car payment. They're going to repossess it. I'm not going to have a place to live. So how do we learn to practice the pause and say, what is the evidence for? What is the evidence against this thought? Consequences, right? We want to identify the emotional feeling that is activated. This is scientific evidence. It takes 90 seconds for a chemical process that happens in the body to produce a feeling. Okay. After that feeling is basically there, any remaining emotion response is just the person choosing to stay in that emotional loop. That's called rumination. Beliefs. Can you identify the trigger associated with past tape or future thinking? This is where the beliefs come in. Am I good enough? What's wrong with me? I did something wrong. We want to dispute the irrational thoughts by asking rational questions. What is upsetting me? Why is this upsetting me? What are the facts for and against this belief or thought? Am I reacting based on facts or feelings, right? We have two parts of our brain. We have our limbic system, which is our fight, flight, and freeze, and we have our prefrontal cortex, which I teach about brain, physiology. And we have what's called our autonomic nervous system. We have our sympathetic and parasympathetic. So instinctually, we are wired for fight, flight, and freeze. If somebody's pointing a gun at us, we're either going to fight, we're going to freeze, or we're going to try and run away, right? But what about the things like, oh, I'm going to lose my job and I'm making things up that have no validity? Is it a fact or is it a feeling? We want to use our prefrontal cortex, not revert to our like lizard instinctual thinking that everything has to be a feeling, everything, right? We want to have both feeling and logic, mostly like 80% logic, 20% feeling. Feelings are normal. People tell you, oh, you shouldn't feel this, you shouldn't feel that. That's garbage. That's what makes us human. That's what positive psychology teaches us, right? That feelings are normal. The problem with feelings is we want to learn to be able to feel the feeling and not get stuck in the feeling. So when you get stuck in sadness or anger, that perpetuates into depression, anxiety, right? We have to learn how to be able to feel the energy and be able to dissipate it. We want to evaluate, are you disputing a judgment or a worry thought? Judgments are why something happened, past or present. Worries are what next thoughts, right? The future, okay? Another module that I teach, and I'll probably do a meetup group, is self-centered fear, okay? This is where this comes in. Self-centered fear is either you're afraid you're going to lose what you have or you're afraid you're not going to get what you want or need, which is worry, regret, okay? But we're talking about perfectionism here, okay? So this is an example of like how you could use real-time resilience skills and use cognitive-based therapy to help you. So you might have like a limited belief question. Let's just say, I'm trying to lose weight and I ate a cookie. The first thought that comes to your mind is, I've just blown my diet completely. And some of these limiting belief words that we have that are associated with, the perfectionism is anything less than. I always have to. I always need to. Why can't I? I should have. I must. Now I'm, right? And what we want to do is part of like really understanding about how to have this real-time resilience skills is there's a couple things we need to do. We want to get real. We want to feel and identify the emotion or feeling. Okay. So what is the feeling that is coming up for me when I'm trying to lose weight and I ate a cookie and I'm telling myself I just blew my whole diet? Is it jealousy? Is it doubt? Is it anger? Is it anxiety? Probably. Regret, loneliness, sadness, shame. There might be some shame behind that. You might be feeling insecure. Okay. What is the thinking trap? Right? How can I identify the thinking trap? Am I jumping to a conclusion? Probably. Am I personalizing, like being real hard on myself? Right? Like those, like if I was to do this real-time resilience skills, I would be like, oh, I'm probably feeling insecure. I'm definitely feeling anxious because I feel like I blew my own diet. I am personalizing. I'm being pretty hard on myself, right? And I need to like ask, I might be also jumping to conclusions. Okay. So then we got to learn to deal. We have to use questions to help develop factual evidence. Again, when we're doing this exercise, we're not doing it with assumptions. You need fact based evidence. You have to picture it as like you're taking your brain to court. What do they do in a court? There is evidence. They're not putting people away in jail just based on feelings. We need facts, right? There's evidence. You have to do the same thing with yourself, with your brain. Have I confused the thought with a fact? What would I tell a friend if they had this thought? How many times has it happened in the past? Am I confusing a possibility with certainty? It may be possible. Is it likely? Is it true? Right? And then we heal. We have to evaluate and dispute the thoughts. So we want to find what is the evidence for this belief and what is the evidence against this belief. So some of the evidence for this belief, I'm trying to lose weight and I ate a cookie, I just blown my whole diet would be, I just ate one cookie. Okay, that's factual. The cookie was 300 calories. That's factual. My pants feel tighter around the waist. Okay, I feel that's factual. Well, what's the evidence against this belief? I only had one cookie in 7 days. Okay. I'm still under my caloric intake per the diet requirements because I added up all the calories for the day. Okay. And you're 1 pound lighter than yesterday, and I'm mistaking fat for muscle because I use the BMI handheld machine to calculate that, right? So you have to take like both things and say, all right, what really is the new belief here? I didn't blow my diet. I'm still on track. In fact, I'm doing better than I anticipated, which gives me leeway to have a treat once in a while. See how this thing works, but it takes practice, right? You have to learn certain things in order for this to work, right? You have to learn new concepts and tools. So here are some additional tips to face perfectionism head on, and we're good on time. Give yourself permission to get vulnerable, right? You deserve to be able to get to a point where you learn the antidote for perfectionism, which is truly learning to love yourself. How did I do that when I was 22 years old? I created something called the 9 ingredients of love: sincerity, courtesy, unselfishness, patience, tolerance, humility, good temper, generosity, and being guileless. And guileless is not being sneaky. And I wrote these down and I put them on my refrigerator and I read them every time I went to the refrigerator, morning, noon, and night. And I was able to learn like what love meant for me. And I was also able to work on a lot of concepts and tools to be able to, and instill them to change some of the beliefs that I had in order to love myself, where I wouldn't worry about what other people think of me, not be a people pleaser, and truly get vulnerable. So you got to put in the work. Like this isn't something that just happens overnight. It's scary to do. And if you have unresolved trauma, it makes it even harder. So you have to really, get down to the root of what's going on and resolve that trauma so you can learn these tools and concepts to help you live a flourishing life, help you take care of your gut, help you take care of your brain, understand that they're connected, understand that you're living in a meat suit and that this is a symbiotic relationship with a bunch of bacteria and a lot of other things that makes you who you are. Okay. That this is an earth school and we're all trying to learn and we're at different grades. Some are on the PhD plan, some are basically just in first grade, but the goal is to learn. Okay. And so you want to also accept, again, like you're human, you're fallible. It's okay to make a mistake. Give yourself permission to feel your feelings. Don't flinch and stuff your emotions. Harder for guys because we've been taught to, some of the myths of masculinity is we shouldn't share our feelings, which is a bunch of garbage because vulnerability transcends both masculine and femininity. We should all be vulnerable, all be able to communicate our feelings, wants, and needs, and also establish boundaries. You also want to trust in yourself that you can weather any storm. Reflect on your past experiences to give you confidence that once again, you will persevere. We don't want to live in our past and our past emotions, but we want to use our past as an example because we've gone through probably so many things in our lives. And if we were able to like look at some of the things that we've gone through. It will help us to realize in the present, if we're going through something, that we could definitely get through it. Share your disappointments and hurts with others. You don't need to do it all alone. And lastly, be your true, authentic self and don't worry about what other people think of you because they probably aren't thinking of you. You're just mind reading, making believe that you think that someone that you're that important when you really aren't, because everybody has their own story and perception of who they are and what they're going through in life. So again, we want to start comparing yourself to yourself and not to others. So accept where you are now. You have no idea what happens behind closed doors for that other person. Be grateful for all that you have. We want to learn to practice gratitude. Celebrate other people's successes. We want to be, when you're not a perfectionist, and you like are released of that, you're kind of like happy for other people's successes, right? It's great that somebody succeeds. You're not intimidated. You're not comparing yourself to other people. Turn comparison into inspiration for your successful plan. Replace the words I should from your vocabulary and replace it with I want. Okay. Practice self-compassion for yourself. Practice forgiveness and stop punishing yourself for mistakes. Develop a growth mindset. Embrace challenges rather than avoid them, which is a fixed mindset. Express gratitude every day for all the wonderful things you have in your life. Practice mindfulness to stay in the moment, to be aware of what is happening right now without judgment or labeling. Be mindful of your critical self-talk and reframe it with kindness. That we talk about, practice the pause. Understand and embrace that all humans experience suffering at some point in our lives. We aren't alone in this experience, and we always get through it. A lot of times the thing that causes us is our suffering is thinking. Our thinking causes us to suffer because we keep thinking and thinking and thinking. There's a difference between having a thought and the thinking about the thought. Okay. Learn to love yourself for who you are spiritually, emotionally, intellectually, and physically. Accept your strengths and weaknesses. Treat yourself how you would treat a close friend or relative. Find meaning for your life. Don't regret the past. What's done is done. Be kind to yourself and practice self-compassion. Embrace your mistakes as an opportunity to learn and grow from. Learn to laugh at yourself. How many of us could actually look in the mirror and laugh at ourselves because we did something stupid? Took a long time for me, but eventually I make stupid things all the time and I laugh at myself because actually I really love myself and I think I'm kind of funny sometimes. So what is the difference between, I always like to bring this up because a lot of people don't or never heard of positive psychology, but positive psychology is what I'm certified in as a positive psychology coach. It consists of cognitive behavioral and humanistic therapies to help you stay north of neutral. And what does that mean? So we look at different different, let's say slices of a pie, right? So when you look to the right of the PERMA V, we're looking at positivity, engagement, relationships, meaning, achievement, and vitality. And basically within each of those categories are different things concepts that you need to learn in order for you to flourish. And so when I coach somebody, I'm basically talking to them and saying, for this piece of pie or a spoke, you can look at a spoke, and each spoke in a wheel is maybe your relationships, your business, your love life, your spirituality, your physical fitness. And we really want to strive to be between an 8 and a 10, in all areas of our life. But north of neutral for me would be like a 7. But sometimes, again, life can bring adversity. And it's the way that we perceive again, right? The way we want to see it is the glass half full, or we want to see the glass half empty, right? And how do we look at that? And basically, we want to be able to say, if I'm in a relationship, for instance, and I experience a breakup, now temporarily, you're going to go from an 8 to a 3. And that's okay because that's what's going to happen because you have to experience feelings depending on what happens in your life. If you go through a divorce, there's a lot of things that have to be split up. Maybe the kids are involved. But the thing that we're trying to teach in positive psychology is that you want to be able to bounce back, learn these tools and skills to help you bounce back as quickly as possible from that 3 back up to a 7 or up to an 8, meaning north of neutral. And listen, we need traditional psychology, but traditional psychology focuses on treating mental illness and vitally important, but does not serve the 85% of the population without a diagnosed disorder. I showed you a whole bunch of disorders on a slide, right? Most people may need, who are on those, who have those different disorders, may have to take medication. Some may realize that there's things from trauma or tools that they can learn to eventually get them off of the medication. Maybe their gut is off. Again, one of my big things as an integrative nutrition coach is to really teach people that the gut and brain are connected. 90% of your serotonin is produced in your gut. Your HPA axis consists of your adrenal glands, your pituitary glands, your hypothalamus that produces these neurotransmitters, cortisol, all these things that's connected to your enteric nervous system, which is your gut. Your enteric nervous system is connected to your central nervous system. There's a there's a connection, a bilateral communication between your brain and gut. The metabolites, the vagus nerves that run down your neck are connected to all of your organs. That's where your sympathetic, your parasympathetic nervous system is comes into play, your autonomic nervous system, where either if you're in your sympathetic nervous system, which is what you want to have, if somebody's pointing a gun at you, you're going to have like cortisol, you want to have energy, you want to be able to run, but you also want to be able to self-regulate when that situation goes away to go back into your parasympathetic nervous system. And the thing that's making these neurotransmitters that most people don't know about, they only know that the microbiome only plays an important part in your immune system. We learned that from COVID, but most people don't have this other information that your microbiome, these bugs that you have more of than cells in your body, produce these metabolites that help keep you mentally and emotionally fit. Okay. So just something that little extra information for you to know about, because that's something that I do help people with. But positive psychology focuses on what's right and aims to create more well-being, happiness, and life satisfaction. It truly is the science of human flourishing. Okay. So what I've done is I went through, when I was going through the example of I ate a cookie and we were saying get real, deal, and heal, I've created a course called Get Real, Deal, and Heal. And we just went through some of the things. I couldn't share everything about perfectionism in the module, but I just went over some of the things that I teach in module 3. And the antidote for module 3 for perfectionism is learning to love yourself. So these are the different lessons that I teach. There's 74 in total that I teach in each different module, right? So in perfectionism, you're learning 12 different lessons. I might have went over like 6, okay? And so, I like to show this to people in case you're interested in wanting to maybe take the course. So for people who are on this call, obviously, I want to do a favor for you. I basically am going to give you a coupon code that when I'll put my website in the chat when we're finished. Actually, you should be able to get to my website with the link that I put in there that tells you about Holistic Wellcare Advisors. And if you use the code Zen100, basically it'll take $100 off for the course. Okay. And when I talked about the gut stuff, these are the things that I have, programs that I have where I really help people with like leaky gut, SIBO, parasites. Like a lot of people don't understand that a lot of the immune disorders that they're experiencing, such as joint pain, rashes, chronic fatigue, and they go to the doctor and the doctor's just giving them medicines, they don't realize that these mimic leaky gut. Leaky gut is something where, over time, from all the processed foods and the foods that you eat, you're basically leaking proteins into your bloodstream, which causes an IgA response. It's basically an immune response that causes these symptoms. It causes inflammation. The root cause of all these issues is inflammation in your brain, in your gut, all over your body. And a lot of people will just start taking pills and thinking that that's the right thing to do when they don't even realize that there's these gut tests, like these comprehensive DNA gut tests, like the Vibrant Gut Zoomer that I do, that will tell you if you have leaky gut, if you have SIBO, if you have parasites, if you have dysbiosis, you don't have the right diversity in your gut, which most people don't. And some people will say, oh, they'll see commercials and they'll be like, take a probiotic or take this or take that. And they don't realize, like, I'm a big testone ingest person. You may be making your situation worse, not better, thinking that you're giving yourself something that's going to help you, when in reality, it's not doing anything for you. So my Get Real Deal and Heal course is in all these different programs. And basically, for anybody who wants to take advantage of any of these, the 6 month, the 3 month, I'll give you a coupon code for gut 499 for a free Vibrant Gut Zoomer test. It usually costs $500 for the Gut Zoomer test. So you're paying $1 for the test. And we'll work on this, okay? So that's another thing, an option for you. I also wrote a book called You're Capable of So Much More, which has my Get Real Deal and Heal course. It's also on audiobook. If you're a Spotify premium member, you could actually listen for free because it's on there, but on audio books, and you could find the audio version of this. It's on Amazon. So this is available to you as well. And that is the end of this presentation. So this is the website link, and I'll put it in the chat again. Oh, look at that. I finished right on time, 7:58. I always love, and I want to thank you for listening. I hope you learned a lot, and I want to open up for questions and answers now. But I really love this quote. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten, right? So if you are continuing to go down the same fixed mindset path, let me tell you, there is a detour that'll get you to the growth mindset path. And that's what you want to do. And you want to take action. Okay. So again, I want to thank you for listening. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to look in the chat because I see one message and see if there's any questions. I am going to ask all to unmute. Hopefully that gave you the ability to do that. And you're welcome, Robert. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns, announcements, anything? That I always love to hear feedback, whether this was something that you really got a lot out of or how I can make it better. Carmela, go ahead.
Hi, Dan.
Hi.
I want to say, first of all, that was a really great presentation. I really appreciate that because I've experienced, people who does have that stuck mentality of like very toxic people, overthinkers. So I wish that person would have watched this presentation as well. But this definitely resonated with me. And it's like infectious too when you meet someone who's like an overthinker, who tends to overthink. It like
Yeah.
spreads to your brain, and then I told the person, look, like you're causing me to overthink. So it's very
Yeah.
poisonous, and I just decided to part ways with the person. And the next thing I did was I just tried to avoid Instagram, so it's been a few days now, and I feel like so much better for, mentally. Like my headspace is like much more clear. I'm more at peace. So a lot of things you mentioned in the chart there, the couple of charts you showed was like really resonated with me. And I appreciate that because it's like really true. Like you have to express vulnerability, which, what the person was very closed off, doesn't want to express their emotions. And it's like, come on, dude, like you got to tell me how you're feeling. I can't just be, wondering what you're thinking. So I definitely 100% like resonated with everything you said. Like expressing your feelings is like a really big deal. Otherwise, it's just going to be, you're just going to be in that stuck mentality, and it's just going to be like a never ending, like vicious cycle. It's terrible. It's a terrible feeling, you know? So
Yeah, it is. And I'm glad that had enough love for yourself, because sometimes it's hard. Like I did it myself when I was a young person where I would give people the benefit of the doubt because I was a kind person and I thought people could change. But you can't change anybody and you have to protect your own sanity. And one of the things about, again, the opposite, the antidote for perfectionism is learning to love yourself. When you love yourself, you're able to put boundaries up too, right?
absolutely.
So kudos to you for realizing that and taking care of Carmela.
Yeah, stepping into my power, so to speak. So yeah,
There
even
you go.
that, yeah, it was really, this presentation like just gave confirmation to like everything, like how I'm feeling and thinking, like just stop overthinking, just the people, a lot of people do that, and it just prevents them from, progressing in a relationship, and it's just, if you want to progress and like transcend, you can't really move forward in life if you're going to have that like toxic mindset.
You
Overthinking,
hit,
terrible.
yeah, yeah, you hit the nail right on the head.
Yeah.
It's like you could almost say that overthinking is jumping to conclusions in a way. Like if when you know all those thinking traps, maximizing, minimizing, like increasing the negative aspects but minimizing the good things. So we have to like really pay attention to our thinking and saying, where this is coming from. What is the evidence for? What is the evidence against these thoughts? And some people might have a hard time doing that. So like I always give people an alternative to be like, I truly believe that all the answers are within us. And, so if a friend was to come to you with the same exact issue, right? And they said to you, "Hey, Carmela, this is what's going on with me." What advice would you give your friend? You'd probably give them great advice. And you have to ask yourself, that's probably what I should be doing. So, we have two ways of doing it. What would a friend basic, what information will we give a friend? Or what is the evidence for and the evidence against these thoughts?
Exactly. And I feel like too that certain traumas that, the other person have experienced in their past, like is they're projecting on you. I feel like, and it's horrible because it's like I'm trying to explain to them like I wasn't that person that hurt you, and they just, I feel like, they're kind of looking at me like I'm the person in their past. So they're just projecting, a lot of projection and like stuck in trauma. And I've told this person like time and time again, I just feel like you're stuck in trauma and you're just always projecting on me. And like, I didn't do that to you, you know? So yeah, it's great. Like 100%. That's all I
Yeah,
want
well,
to
thank you.
say.
Oh, well, thank you, Carmela. I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing. Patricia, thank you for your great note. I had done leaky gut repair years ago and noticed I was also in the best mental condition of my life. Glad to know you're spreading the word. Well, listen, I'm somebody who had leaky gut and I found functional medicine 17 years ago. And I was one of those people who had gut issues. And the doctors were saying, "Oh, you have a reactivation of Epstein-Barr. Here's some prednisone. Here's this, here's that." And I finally got sick and tired of being sick and tired of like having this. And luckily, the partner who I was with at the time, she went to a conference on functional medicine, brought home this thick packet. And I was 38 years old at the time. And I went to a functional medicine doctor, and that's what transformed my whole life. I found out that I had the gene for celiac. I found out that I didn't methylate vitamin B12 properly. I found out that I needed to stay away from dairy and, did food sensitivity tests and went on a supplement program. And within 8 to 10 weeks, my whole body changed and my mental state changed. The rashes went away. The chronic fatigue went away. The joint pain went away. And I'm somebody who's been working out since I lifted my first weight when I was 12 and joined my first gym as soon as I got my license at 17. And I'm going to be 55 in a week. So for me, it's like, even though I was, working out, which probably kept me somewhat sane, I still was a little insane because I felt miserable and my mental state was not right. And when I cured the dysbiosis and got my gut right, everything functioned properly. I didn't have the anxiety. I instituted some other things like yoga and breathing exercises are really important and meditation. Like, all these things are really important, especially breathing. And that's what I teach in the Get Real Deal and Heal course too, as well, is how you could breathe. Because I'm also a certified yoga instructor. Excuse me. I really don't teach yoga anymore, but I can teach people how to breathe properly. It's interesting. One of the first things that kids learn who want to become monks, like they become monks at a very young age, the first thing they teach them is how to breathe. It's one of the most important things that we have to learn. Let's see what we got in here. Another comment that I didn't read. Let's see, from Beatrice. Is Beatrice still here or is she? Oh, yes, she's here. Thank you for delivering such an insight presentation with powerful reminders to stop negative self-talk. Be kind to ourselves and prioritize progress over perfection. Yes. I also appreciate the practical tips and reflections. Great. Well, thank you for that, Beatrice. Does anyone else have any comments, questions, announcements? Anything else that they'd like to talk about? Just to share my screen again, just to kind of give you guys an idea if you are interested in like a free consultation or anything like that, you could go to my Holistic Wellcare Advisors website. And I do have some things in here. If you go to the practitioner shop and you go to the Holistic Hub, it'll pull this up. And this will give you like a book your free 15-minute intro call. And then there's other things that I have here that you guys could check out. Okay. Please feel free to ping me. Again, this recording will be available tomorrow in the chat, and I will be sending it to everybody who registered for the event. Robert, who is on this call, is going to be doing a presentation next Thursday. He's a hypnotherapist, so I hope you guys can make it next week. And for that, let's see, where is the presentation being posted to review? So let me show you where that's going to be posted. Let me share my screen again really quickly. So if you go to the Meetup group here and you go into the actual event, well, it'll be a past event now, okay? So when you go onto the main thing, you'll see past events. Basically, where I'm going to put it is right in this comments section, okay? And what I'm also going to do is I could use this organizer tool thing. I'm also going to contact the attendees, right? And I'm going to put the link in and it says members who RSVP'd. You're also going to get the link set to you via email. So you'll have it there as well. So I like to record these things because you never know who's going to need this in a month. Like maybe you might run into a friend or family member who you attended this meeting, and then a month from now you'd be like, oh, I attended this really great thing and Dan Stillman is awesome. But no, but basically I'm funny. But no, so basically I put it in there so people could reference. And also with the other practitioners who are guest speakers, you may want to work with them. So, you could get their contact information and be able to provide that to your friends and family for a past event. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Patricia. Anybody else have any comments, questions, announcements before we end this? No? All right, everybody. Well, thank you again for attending. I hope you have a wonderful evening filled with accomplishments, laughter, and joy. Take care, everybody. Have a good one.